Welcome to the Improve Work podcast. I'm your host, Daniela Tancău, an HR consultant helping entrepreneurs and team leaders build motivated, high-performing teams. Here we talk about leadership, employee motivation, and other topics that enhance your ability to lead, whether you are an entrepreneur with a team, a business owner planning to build one, or a leader in a company. You'll gain practical advice and insights from me and my guests, experts in the field and entrepreneurs who share their leadership experiences. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe to stay updated on every episode. Let's dive into today's topic. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Improve Work podcast. Thank you for being here. Today's episode main topic is employee behavioral change. And there are many contexts in which employees are required to change their behavior, but this is not a simple process, right? There could be new employees who need to forget old habits in order to integrate and be accepted in a new company. There could be also situations when team leaders want to change some behaviors that are not considered beneficial for the company. And simply asking for a change is most often not enough. John Kolm, our guest in this episode, brings us more information about how behaviors can be changed and how they can be sustained through different company systems, processes, and practices. John is a co-founder and CEO of Team Results, a company that is focused on training and simulation programs that help companies change employees' behaviors. And they have worked with well-known companies, which proves the value of their programs. John's educational background is in psychology, mathematics, and statistics, and he's a former intelligence officer. He's also a best-selling author. Together with his company's co-founder, Peter Ring, he wrote Crocodile Charlie and the Holy Grail. And you'll hear him talking a little bit about this book in this episode. Let's dive in and learn more about how behaviors can be changed. Welcome to the podcast, John. I'm glad that you are here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We'll discuss about employee behavioral change, about what helps to change behaviors that are not considered good for the company. And this is an interesting topic because it involves a lot of knowledge about human behavior and what it takes to eliminate the well-established behavioral patterns and introduce new ones. And I will start with a typical situation that often requires behavioral change in a company. And I mean I'm referring to a new employee. So when we have a new person joining a company, they are expected to demonstrate certain behaviors. And some of these behaviors are new to them. Some of them are contrary to what they are used to. And they need to adapt. So they are accepted by the company. So I want to ask you, what factors do you think influence whether a new person adopts the expected behaviors? And is it about the perceived cost of not adopting these behaviors, or are other factors as well?
Daniela, for most people, when they join a new company, it's about not knowing what the desired behaviors are. It's very much like the first day of school. You don't know
Yes.
where you fit in, you don't have any friends, you don't know who the good teachers and the bad teachers are, whether they like you or not, and you don't know whether you'll fit in. So there's a lot of uncertainty in that first day. And mostly what we do in business is we let people flounder. We let them find out the hard way. We let them find out that certain things are not the done thing by letting them offend somebody by doing the wrong thing. So now they are offside with that person. And it's only because they didn't really know what they were supposed to do or what was expected. So one of the things we don't do, at least not in Western society, in other societies and other cultures, it's done all the time. But in Western society, we don't sit people down so much and explain. These are the values in this team, not the ones that are up on the wall, but the real values. These are the things that are important to us, the way we work together. Here's how you get on with certain people. This is what boss A likes and doesn't like. This is what boss A likes, or boss B likes and doesn't like. It's a lot better often if we just sit these people down and just tell them what the unwritten rules are. And
Mhm.
we don't really do that nearly often enough.
But when they become aware of these expectations and of the fact that some behaviors are new to them and are not necessarily aligned with what they are used to or uh, consider the best way to proceed, how they change their behaviors? Do they change those behaviors, or are there some factors that influence them to make those changes?
Daniela, the way that we learn and habituate to new habits, new patterns of behavior at work is not greatly different from the way we did it when we were 2 years old. Human beings are designed to learn by copying, by imitation. We learn not to talk over adults at the dinner table and just completely interrupt and yell over the top of them by repeated experience. We do it, we get told, you don't do that. We do it again, we get told, no, you don't do it that way. And eventually the new habits pick up. We do this at work too, but we've forgotten all about it. And the signature
Mm-hmm.
tune of the bad boss who is getting behaviors they don't want or justifying to their boss why there are bad behaviors going on. The signature tune of the bad boss is to say, well, I told them not to do that. Yes, you did tell them, but that's not how you bring people along. You bring people along by helping them rehearse behaviors until they get it right. And actually, there's another step beyond that. And it's worth thinking about the concert pianist and wondering, why does the concert pianist never miss a note? And the answer is that they take it one step further, and only the best organizations do that with their employees. Most organizations won't do anything. Some of the better organizations will help people rehearse behaviors until they get it right, and that is what our company, Team Results USA, does for a living. But the professional concert pianist rehearses until they can't get it wrong. And you
Mm-hmm.
see that in the elite organizations and the organizations where there's very high stakes: surgeons, astronauts, people who drive forklifts. Those sorts of people just can't afford to get their behaviors wrong. And so they practice and practice until it's completely instinctive. Practice and rehearsal, Daniela, is the answer people are looking for there.
Mm-hmm. But should the leaders also give reasons, explain what those why those behaviors are expected, and what are the values beneath them, what are the reasons they ask for those behaviors? And some behaviors are not necessarily behaviors that lead to mistakes, but
Yes.
they are nuances and maybe they are just preferences within the company.
There's a lot of emphasis right now, it's a trendy thing, on leaders in the magic effects of explaining the why. Uh, the
Mm-hmm.
why is the why is good, but only up to a point. Imagine, for example, the boss who is constantly explaining why you don't interrupt people when they're speaking, and yet the boss constantly interrupts people when they're speaking. The
Mm-hmm.
message that the workers get is from behavior, not from the why. And they're more likely to copy the behavior because, after all, that's how it really is around here. The bosses
Mm-hmm.
say the bosses say don't talk over the top of people, but they do it all the time, and they're the bosses. So that's how it really is around here. And then the bosses wonder why they get these behaviors that are imitative of their modeled behaviors and not of their explanations of the why. So I would argue the more important role of the leader is to lead by attitude and by example, and to
Mm-hmm.
provide people with an opportunity to rehearse the behaviors that are needed. But they have to lead by attitude and example. So if you want people to have smooth meetings that run efficiently without constantly interrupting each other, you have to give them the opportunity to practice the behavior, but you also have to do it yourself.
Yes, yes, yes. Imitating and copying other, especially the leader behavior, is a helpful way to change behaviors. But regarding the why, I know experience research that shows that when people understand or you give them a reason why they should do something, they are more open to do that thing, and this is demonstrated.
So there's an idea in psychotherapy, Daniela, pardon me, called rational cognitive therapy. And
Mhm.
that's where this thinking comes from. And you're right, there's a very strong scientific basis in that, as long as it's paired then with rehearsal and behavioral change
Mhm.
and not
Mhm.
just talking. The idea of rational cognitive therapy is that the first step is to look at the assumptions that govern behavior. I'll
Mhm.
give you an example. in order to be noticed, I have to be noisy.
Mhm.
Now, that might be an assumption, but the way these assumptions are phrased, if anyone wants to do this for themselves, always is in order to X, I have to Y. And this is an accepted notion in psychology and psychotherapy. It's not junk science. It's something that's real, that works. In order to be noticed, I have to be noisy. The rational part is to look at that and say, well, is that really true? Is it really true that I have to be noisy in order to be noticed? My boss is a very well respected guy. He's not noisy, and yet he's noticed all the time. So maybe it isn't true. So the first step is to look at that, understand the why, and think, well, maybe that assumption isn't true. Maybe there are better ways to be noticed. But the next step is to rehearse new behaviors until they become embedded. Now,
Mhm.
that can be done a couple of ways. It can be done by trial and error, but that takes a lot. That's fine. That's what most people do, but it does take a long time. And it can result in hurt feelings and getting people offside and not intending to get people offside, but doing it anyway. Or you can provide people at work with a platform where they can rehearse that behavior, just as you don't immediately drop someone into the cockpit of an aeroplane and say, go fly the plane. We all know that you have to spend many hours on the simulator before you can do that. In work as well, there is a trend now, there is a move toward, and my company is very much a part of it, toward giving people a chance to simulate workplace situations and get those behaviors fine-tuned to the point where they really work before it really matters. So that in effect, you land the plane, you crash the plane, but it's only a simulator. So what? You keep doing it until you get good at it.
Mhm.
There's an American actor named Denzel Washington. And my favorite quote from Denzel Washington is, if you do anything long enough, you'll get good at it.
Yes, yes, it's true. Yes. And another thing I want to talk with you is about the situation in which some employees follow the expectations, they meet those expectations, but they are not truly aligned in terms of values. They follow them, but they don't believe in the reasons or the values that are behind those behaviors. And this can be an issue because in certain situations they may not follow those behaviors, those expected behaviors, and have other behaviors that are maybe problematic for the company. And also, it's demonstrated that they have less engagement in their work because they don't truly believe in those expectations and behaviors. How would you address these situations, and how would you recognize a behavior that is of a person who truly believes in those behaviors that are requested, and a person who doesn't believe?
So blind compliance, Daniela, just following the rules because they're the rules and shrugging and saying, well, this is what they want. So, I'll just do it. I don't care. I'll just follow the rules. It's often called blind compliance, and
Mhm.
it works until it doesn't. And sometimes it stops working very quickly. And these are the situations where something unusual happens and the rule book doesn't work anymore. And if people are just blindly complying according to the rule book and they run out of rules, that's when you get huge mistakes made and you get
Mhm.
huge industrial accidents, huge air accidents, huge unintentional social accidents at the workplace. Suddenly you're in real trouble. And that can be interpersonal trouble, or it can be being on the headlines of the newspapers in the wrong way. And we can all think of examples. Or if it's an organization that does things that are safety critical, like flying airplanes, operating forklifts, or running heart surgery, then things can go very wrong very quickly. And it's because people have gotten to the habit of just following the rules because they're the rules. And suddenly they don't know what the rules are. So now they take a wild guess and they have no idea what the intention is or what the vision is or what the commander's intent is. So the big secret for good leaders in this regard is a thing called the commander's intent. And I'd strongly recommend to people that they know that. The purpose of the commander's intent is simply not only telling people what to do, but telling them what your intention is.
Mhm.
So team A, go north, team B, go south, and be there by 2 o'clock tomorrow. That's telling people what to do. But the danger is that they'll miss each other or that you'll get a result you never intended because you didn't tell them what the commander's intent was. The commander's intent was teams A and B will meet on the top of the hill, and team A has the food and team B has the radios, and you'll share the resources. That's what my intention is.
Hmm.
Now, if you don't explain the intention, they'll just blindly follow the rules because you're the boss, and they could meet on the top of different hills, or they could bring all radios and no food, or all food and no radios, and that's when you start to get really bad mix-ups. So always make sure people know what the intention is. The other part to that is to get people excited about the intention. And the mistake we make there is that we often think work should be exciting. And the reality of work is not exciting. Our company has worked with astronauts and on their team dynamics, and you would think astronauts have the most exciting job in the world. But can you guess what the number one problem is with astronauts in spaceflight, Daniela? What would you guess?
I don't know.
Boredom.
Oh.
Boredom is the number one problem. The most exciting job in the world. Biggest problem? They're bored to death. And that's because all task is mundane. When you boil task right down to do this, do that, task is never exciting. What's exciting is the vision that comes with the task. And only the best leaders are able to impart that vision that comes with the task. There was a French philosopher named Georges Louis Bourges who said, if you want people to sail somewhere, you can yell at them until they build the mast and the wooden sides of the ship and the sails, or you can get them excited about the possibilities of the vast and endless sea. And it is that vision, that excitement that will keep them going through storms and keep them on course even when the wind's blowing in the opposite direction because they know what success looks like.
Hmm.
So while too many bosses think they don't have the time, it's mostly a problem of time. Too many bosses think, oh, I don't have the time to explain the vision to them. It's too complicated. They'll never understand it. That boss is going to be constantly frustrated by people not following his intention because he didn't communicate his intention.
But if an employee, let's say, understand the vision and the intentions, but doesn't necessarily agree with those things, that person follows the expectations, but only when they know that they are seen. Let's say that you expect from an employee to use their work time to work and not to do other things. But when their boss is not there, are not there, or they know for sure that they can't be controlled or seen, nobody knows what they are doing, they may do different things that are not related to work. So I'm talking about this situation in which the leader thinks that people agree and will follow those expectations, but in reality, in certain situations, they may manifest other behaviors.
Colin Powell, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the United States military and then became US Secretary of State, used to say, I'd had the good fortune to meet him a few times, and Colin Powell used to say that leading people sometimes means upsetting people. So if you need to be loved by everybody all the time, then leadership's probably not the best choice for you. You're probably better off being a comedian or something.
Of course.
So there will be times when people just don't fit. For example, I would be a person that did not fit if I were working for a cigarette company because I don't like what cigarette companies do and I don't like how they market to young people and I never will. So I'll never be a good fit for a cigarette company. That company should not employ me. And if they do, all they're going to get is my body and my dumb compliance for as long as I need the money.
Hmm.
And that's all they're ever going to get. So organizations, leaders need to occasionally recognize when people are just not the right fit because they just aren't. They understand what the behaviors are, but they do not agree with it. They understand what the vision is, but they do not agree with that. They're fundamentally opposed to it, as I would be to trying to sell cigarettes to young kids and get them addicted to tobacco. They're just fundamentally opposed to it. Those people need to go. And at that point, you have to stop thinking about the good of the individual and think about the good of the team. Now,
Hmm.
if you have any ethics at all, if you're a decent person, you're going to feel bad about that. You're going to cry your tears. You're going to have your nights of feeling really bad about having to let someone go. But that's what the job is. If
Hmm.
you're not prepared to think of the welfare of the team, then you're not really in the position to guard the welfare of the team. So bottom line, Daniela, sometimes people just need to move on because they're not a good fit.
Mhm. So if team leaders discover these cases, if they figure out that there is a difference between their behaviors in different circumstances, they should take measures and ultimately fire those people. If they don't,
Yes,
can't they rediscuss the situations? Can they change those behaviors?
sometimes yes, sometimes no. But the guideline that psychologists have always used, and this is something that maybe should be explained to every leader, this is a rough guideline. There are exceptions, but the rough rule of thumb in the world of psychology is that you can change behavior, but you can't change personality. So if you are requiring personality change before the person can fit in, that is probably something that won't work. That's something that has a very low chance of working. And then,
Mhm,
Daniela, you're in the world of negotiation.
mhm,
The weak bosses aren't. They're in the world of yelling at them and disagreeing with them. And how could you be so stupid? But smarter bosses realize that what has to be negotiated now is a smooth exit that works for everybody.
mhm,
And sometimes in a larger organization, you can get some help from that, from the employee assistance program or from human resources or whoever they've got. But bottom line is if you're a good boss, you'll be able to negotiate a frictionless exit.
mhm, mhm. Okay, let's talk now about the situations in which, let's say, in a company there is a widespread behavior that it is not wanted. Maybe the company leadership has changed and they don't agree with that behavior, or maybe they just observe that behavior that was not addressed from the start developed and take a large it was adopted by a large number of employees and they want to change this. Are there certain steps they can take to change these kinds of behaviors that are largely spread in the company?
Yes, yes, there are. And there's one big mistake to avoid. And the big mistake is characterized by the blast email. The CEO or the director of HR sends an email to all 2,500 employees saying, from now on, sales reports will only report actual sales, not predicted sales. Stop reporting predicted sales on sales reports. It's messing up our numbers, and we just have to correct it next month. Stop that. Don't do that anymore. And and everybody gets the email from the director of whatever, and they go, "Oh, sure, yes, ma'am, of course." Now, mostly what that will do is drive the behavior underground rather than eliminate it. Because if it is endemic in the organization, if it is perceived as how things are around here, the way things really are, the way things are really done around here, never mind what people say, what they really do is this other X. They misreport sales figures. Then that's what I'll do because that's what everybody else is doing. Humans tend to flock. They tend to herd. They tend to stick together and move like birds. So if you ever see a flock of birds moving together at the seaside, humans tend to be that way as well. So if you see that endemic in the organization, you know that that's now part of the culture. You don't change culture with edicts and emails. All you do is drive it underground. The right way to do it is to start small. And we have a model that we've used. We've used it very successfully in our company. We originally pioneered it with Toyota when they had to make some very, very big changes as they brought in just in time and supply chain, which were two huge cultural changes in the way cars are made worldwide. And Toyota didn't want to be second at that. They wanted to be first. So they hired us to help. And the way to do it is you start with a small group of change leaders. Now, I can't go into the full methodology here, it would take too long, but you start with a small group of change leaders, people who are visionary, who are prepared to put in the extra effort, see the need for behavioral change, want to drive it. And you start locally and you create curiosity, you create local success, and then you go out to the next ring of influence and the next ring of influence and the next ring of influence. And this is actually based on the work of a famous Hungarian mathematician, and his name was Paul Erdős.
Mhm.
It's based on an old joke about the work of Paul Erdős. I won't have time to get into that either. But essentially, what you're doing is you're creating curiosity, interest, and a desire to be involved in something exciting and get on board as you slowly increase the circles of influence. And
Mhm.
eventually, you get to the point where you get major behavioral change in the organization. But it takes time, patience, and practice. You don't do it with one email.
Interesting perspective. I didn't hear about this to create curiosity. I think it's a very impactful method.
We used to know the method was working. We used to say to the top leaders, you'll know this method is working when you start getting complaints. And people say, why didn't you tell me? Why wasn't I involved? Why wasn't I included? Why didn't I get to go on that retreat for behavioral change? And we tell our senior managers the right response to that is you apologize and you include them. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry you weren't included. Would you like to be in the next round? Yes, I would. And that's how you do it. People get on board.
They want to belong to be special in that company.
They do. They see something exciting, something that lifts their spirits, and they want to belong.
Mhm.
And actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I wrote a book about this. So if anybody wants to know more, they can read that book. Can I tell people what the book is?
Yes, yes, sure.
Okay. The title of the book is a bit unusual. It's called Crocodile Charlie and the Holy Grail.
Mhm.
And both my business partner and I thought that would never be published, but it was actually picked up by Penguin, and they're the world's biggest book publisher. And this
Mhm.
book ended up in 7 languages and 14 countries. So you should
Congratulations.
thank you, but you should be able to get it in the language that you speak, whatever that is, or at least the language that you know. Crocodile Charlie and the Holy Grail is on Amazon, and it is the story of how this work was done at Toyota.
Interesting. So I understand that when you introduce this change, you should take into account the whole company. So you don't have system or processes or team leaders that interfere with that change, right?
You will get interference. You have to expect some opposition. And that's actually covered in the book as well. We specifically covered the case of people in the company who think this is stupid and unnecessary and the latest fad, and they're very deeply embedded in their cynicism and their established habits, and they don't want to change. And you will find some people who will not change and will not be reached by this system. And that's just reality. And you mustn't give up when that happens. Remember what your goal is. Your goal is to influence the vast majority of the workplace. You don't have to influence everybody. The few people that viscerally disagree with the whole thing, it's against their values for whatever reason, those people will eventually move on, but it will
Mhm.
take a little while before they realize that they can't get traction anymore. And you shouldn't stop with your change leadership initiative. You shouldn't even slow down. Just keep right on going. Don't get into arguments with those people. Just
Mhm.
concentrate on the people who do want to jump on board. Eventually, that will be almost everyone.
Yes, I'm referring to the situation in which a company has some more processes or rewarding systems that are not aligned with those changes.
Right.
And I'm saying that they should pay attention to all the things that make that company works, system, processes, methods, and they have to be aligned. So different people have to be involved in those changes.
Yes. This is actually one of the great benefits of the change leadership methodology. Because once you form a team of change leaders, people who want to be in the team of change leaders, don't make that team huge. You don't want an initial change leadership team of more than about 7 people is a perfect number.
Mhm.
You don't want it any bigger than that. But once you have a change leaders team of about 7 people, they're keen, they want to do it. You're giving them all the resources they need. They know that the company has to move to a new method of reporting sales because the old de facto method was never something that was wanted and it never worked and it always resulted in unreliable figures. They
Mhm.
know what has to be done. That's not enough on its own. The next thing you need to do to keep your team of change leaders together is to give them a purpose, Daniela. You have to give them a job to do. And
Mhm.
that's where those processes to which you're referring really kick in. We're doing a change leaders program right now with a large client. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're looking at major processes in the company that are unhelpful. They're interviewing senior managers from the CEO on down and saying, what's the thing that really annoys you the most? What's one process you'd just like to kill stone dead, but you can't because it just keeps rearing its head again and again and it just won't die? And so a lot of the time, the best work you'll get done with these change leaders is they'll identify the few processes that do need to change. For example, it might be the whole sales reporting process needs to change. So they re-engineer the process, they present that to senior leaders, they get people on board, they trial it. So those ideas for change will come from your change leaders.
Yes, yes. So a change comes with a lot of other changes in the company, not only behavior changes, but also in processes and systems, the way people work. But I
No,
want to,
no, no point just changing behavior if you have a reporting system that makes you file false reports.
yes,
The system needs to change as well.
right, right. I think that most team leaders use reward and sanctions to encourage enhance some behaviors and discourage others' behaviors. What is your opinion about this? And when do you think that these methods work best, and when they fail to meet their goals?
The reward and sanctions technique is sometimes if you talk to a really old manager, they'll remember when this used to be taught many years ago as the carrot and stick technique.
Yes, yes.
So you dangle a carrot in front of them to make them go forward, and then you whack them from behind with the stick so that they don't stop. The problem with the carrot and stick technique is it only works for a certain limited time, and it
Mhm.
only works while the carrot is there and the stick is there. The minute the carrot's withdrawn or the stick is withdrawn, people learn very quickly that the carrot is not really a carrot and they'll never get the carrot, and that the stick is not really a stick and that they never really get hit. Or if they do, they don't get hit hard enough to make them care. So the carrot and stick technique is very short term, requires constant supervision, and is highly unreliable. So
Mhm.
organizations that rely on that are characterized by constant frustration, constant failure to meet goals, and complaining managers. And what the
Mhm.
managers say is our people are so stupid, they don't listen. They have to whack them with a stick just to make them do anything. It's a constant hassle. I can't turn my back for 10 seconds. That's a bad manager.
Right.
That's a bad
For
leader.
sure. For sure.
The right way to do it, of course, is to get people to the point where they see the value to them in doing the behaviors that the organization needs and working on that. Now, that doesn't mean that you must not have a stick. We had a case the other day with a client where someone did get fired and they were right to get fired because they abused a member of the public who saw them doing something unsafe, and you can't have that. They're going to kill someone and they're going to do it right in front of the public. That you simply can't tolerate that. So yes, that was the stick. But
Mhm.
on the other hand, that was a person with whom all other methods had failed. And as I keep saying, eventually every leader will get to the point where they have to weigh the value of the team against the value of the individual.
Mhm. I want to also to ask you about if you have been in a situation in which I know that you run these training programs where you change behaviors.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you if you were asked to change a behavior that you didn't agree with, you consider that is not an ethical change, because some companies encourage some values, others other values, and we don't necessarily can say that a value is better than another value, but we have our own values, and sometimes our personal values and the company's values are in conflict. Were you in such a situation in which you consider that that request is not ethical? It wasn't in accordance with what you think that it's correct.
Daniela, when our company was very young and developing, this is about 20 years ago, and we desperately needed clients and we desperately needed money, we turned down a $500,000 deal.
Mm-hmm.
We walked away from $500,000 for a deal with a cigarette company because they wanted us to run team and leadership programs for their sales teams. And the purpose of their sales teams was to get young people to start smoking because
Mm,
that's their future income, of course. If young people don't start smoking, the old people are going to die. And they'll have no customers. And we walked away, as I said, from a lot of money because we just couldn't agree with it ethically. If you act against your ethics, you'll eventually stop caring about people. Because
Yes.
the definition of ethics is simply an awareness of the needs of others, Daniela. That's all ethics are. Ethics are just an awareness of the needs of others. No awareness, no ethics. Well, perhaps you are aware of the needs of others and you just don't care. Also,
Mm-hmm.
no ethics. And we knew that wouldn't work. We knew that if we grew a company that had no ethics, we'd eventually have no future. So you have to be willing to make that sacrifice. You have to be willing to tell truth to power. And the bottom line here is that if you are doing something or being asked to do something that goes completely against your ethics, if you've thought about it very deeply, two messages I'd have for a person who's in that situation. And by the way, this is no joke. We can talk about this lightly on the air, but it's a very unpleasant situation to be in. I've been in that situation myself before. I used to be an intelligence officer. In that line of work, you're frequently asked what's ethical, what's not. Is it okay to be ruthless? Because you have to be. But is it
Mm-hmm.
okay to be ruthless in the service of bad ethics? Less so. Is it okay to follow an illegal order? No, but you have to have the courage to say, sir, that's an illegal order and I won't follow it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two big messages here. The first is that there is no substitute for courage. And if you want to lead people, you are at some point going to have to find your courage. And the second thing is to be very clear on what your values are. Because if you ask me to do something that just annoys me but doesn't contravene a value, I can probably live with that. Most people can. But if you ask me to do something that contravenes a value, that's when I have to dig in and say, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
I'm glad that you turn that offer down. And I have one last question because we are at the end of this episode. I want to ask you, how can people learn more about you, about your business, and how can they can reach you?
So there are three things people can do. The first and easiest is they can look at our website, and our website is I don't know why people say www, but anyway, it's www.teamresultsusa.com. TEAM results with an S USA, all is one word.com. It's a pretty good website. Take a look around, meet our people, see what you think. The second thing people can do depends on where they are. But if you are in North America or if you're willing to travel, we do run regular team and leadership programs in person. These take 2.5 days. We have a beautiful 250-acre property in the United States, in the state of Maryland, which isn't far from Washington, D.C., where we do that. And you can, of course, send your team and sign up for these programs. And people do travel from all over the world to come to these programs. So you wouldn't be out of place at all if you traveled internationally. No problem at all. And you can get in touch with us about that. And the information for that, of course, is also on the website. And the third thing I'd recommend is that we built, believe it or not, an AI. We built our own artificial intelligence engine. And that is for people who can't travel because they can't afford it or they're in a
Mm-hmm.
foreign country and there's no chance they can come to America, that kind of thing. And that's called Dorothy's Road. And that's from a famous American movie called The Wizard of Oz. We're off to see the wizard. And Dorothy's Road is spelled Dorothy's Road. So Dorothy with an S, dorothysroad.com. And that will answer your questions about the workplace. And we have about 70 world-class experts who have contributed all their knowledge to Dorothy's Road. So that's who you're talking with when you're on Dorothy's Road. And you can log into her at 2 o'clock in the morning and ask anything you want. How do I get promoted? I offended my boss. What do I do now? How do I deal with someone at meetings who just won't stop talking? There's just no way to stop them talking. Nobody else gets to say anything because they just yap that the whole time. And I'm not their boss, so I can't tell them to shut up. What can I do? You can have a long conversation about that with Dorothy's Road, like she was a friend over a coffee advising you. And if you still have questions, she'll refer you to an expert. So those are the three things. Visit our website, come along on one of our programs, or go to Dorothy's Road.
Great, John. Thank you very much. I will put all the links in the description of this episode, and I'm sure that people can benefit from your programs. They sound very interesting, and I think that they are very effective.
Daniela, it's been a real pleasure. Warm regards to everybody listening, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you found value in this podcast, subscribe to stay updated. I'm grateful for your support and hope to continue providing content that helps you grow. See you in the next episode.